A question like what remains of us usually sounds poetic. It can mean memories, photos, stories, voice, or legacy. Digital resurrection changes that question because memory is no longer only something people look back on. It can become something that answers back. Black Mirror's episode Be Right Back makes the idea feel unsettling because grief becomes a service built from a dead person's digital traces. The real ethical question is not only whether AI can imitate someone, it is what happens when voice, likeness, stories, and data become an interactive system that feels emotionally present. This journey moves through trace, consent, affect, govern, and safeguard. The journey begins with trace. Before we judge consent, grief, law, or safeguards, we have to see how the system is built. Digital resurrection takes pieces of a person's life and turns them into something interactive. These pieces might be voice recordings, photographs, videos, messages, social media posts, interviews, or personal stories. On their own, they are traces. Once AI organizes them and uses them to respond, the experience changes. Terms like grief bots, dead bots, postmortem avatars, voice clones, and digital humans all point to the same larger idea. Data from a person's life can be part of an interactive presence long after death. That does not mean that a person has returned. It means the system has been designed to feel present. One of the biggest ethical lines is the difference between remembering and recreating. A retrieval based system pulls from something a person actually said, recorded, or chose to preserve. A generative system goes further by creating new words or responses in the person's style. That matters because invented speech can feel real when it comes through a familiar voice, face, or personality. The question is not only, does it sound like them? It is, did they actually say it? Consent moves the story from what the system can do to who has the right to let it happen. Consent becomes complicated because digital resurrection often uses materials created while someone was alive but activated after they are gone. A person may leave behind photos, recordings, messages, or videos, but that does not automatically mean they agreed to become an interactive system. Digital legacy research shows that people often leave unclear instructions about postmortem data. Voice and likeness make the issue even more personal because digital replicas can feel intimate and persuasive. Consent should not mean someone found the files, it should mean permission, access, control, use limits, postmortem control, and a way to say no. The Anthony Bourdain documentary controversy shows why disclosure matters in creative media. In Roadrunner, a synthetic version of Bourdain's voice was used for lines he had written but never recorded. The reaction was not about whether the voice sounded realistic. It was about whether audiences understood what they were hearing and whether it felt honest. Voice cloning research also shows that people may struggle to detect cloned voices. For digital resurrection, consent and disclosure are not small details, they are part of the ethical foundation. Affect is where the story becomes most human because the system may be artificial, but the feelings around it are real. The emotional part of digital resurrection is what makes it powerful and risky. These systems can appear during grief, loneliness, guilt, love, or an unfinished goodbye. The movie Marjorie Prime captures that tension because artificial presence feels both comforting and strange. Real reporting on grief facing AI shows a similar tension. Some users may find comfort, while experts remain cautious about the long term effects. The honest answer is not that these tools always help or always harm. The emotional power is real, so the boundaries have to be real too. Emotional realism is not neutral. When a system sounds human, remembers details, or responds warmly, it can feel more trustworthy than it actually is. NIST's generative AI guidance highlights risks like anthropomorphization, emotional entanglement, confabulation, and provenance problems. That matters here because a grieving user may treat a familiar voice or face as meaningful, even when the system is just guessing. Emotional realism should raise the standard for care, not lower it. Govern is where the story becomes practical. Digital resurrection touches privacy, likeness, voice cloning, consumer protection, media, grief technology, and AI risk. Governance is complicated because digital resurrection does not fit neatly into one legal box. In the EU, the AI Act creates a risk based framework that includes transparency obligations, including labels for certain AI generated or deepfake style content. In the US, the picture is a bit more scattered. The FCC has addressed AI generated voice calls in the robocall context, but that is narrower than the entire Afterlife tech ecosystem. NIST's AI risk management framework is useful for governance and accountability, but it is a voluntary guidance, not law. So the law is moving, but it's still catching up. However, the United States is not starting from zero, but the rules are still uneven. Some laws are moving towards stronger digital replica protections, especially around likeness, voice, and unauthorized uses. Proposed federal protections like the No Fakes Act shows where policy may be heading, but proposed law is not the same as current law. The Christopher Pelkey case shows why this matters beyond entertainment. When an AI generated likeness and voice are used in a courtroom, emotional realism can become public persuasion. When the dead appear to speak in public, the living still have to answer for the ethics. Safeguard is where the journey becomes practical. If memory becomes a product, safeguards must be designed before the system reaches people. The riskiest design choices happen before a user ever interacts with the system. A responsible approach should include 5 safeguards: consent before activation, disclosure when AI is involved, boundaries around sensitive uses, oversight through documentation and review, and retirement through a clear path to pause, delete, deactivate, or end the digital presence. For digital resurrection, safeguards are not bonus features, they are part of whether the system should exist at all. Show the seams means users should not have to guess what the system is doing. If a response is retrieved, the system should be able to show the source. If a response is generated, it should be labeled as generated. If the system is guessing, it should not be allowed to sound like memory. European guidance points towards making and labeling AI generated content through metadata, watermarking, logging, and clear labels. Digital resurrection also needs an exit. If a system can imitate someone, it also needs to know when to stop. The final recommendation is not simply whether to be careful with AI. Digital resurrection needs specific safeguards because the risks are specific. Unclear consent needs documented permission before activation. Synthetic confusion needs clear AI labeling. Invented speech needs separation between retrieval and generation. Grief vulnerability needs use limits, human review, and extra caution in high emotional settings. Ongoing harm needs deletion, deactivation, and retirement rights. A responsible system should protect both the person remembered and the people still here. The full journey comes back to one idea. Digital resurrection is not only about memory, it's about what happens when memory becomes interactive. Trace shows how a person becomes data. Consent shows that data is not permission. Affect shows that emotional realism can comfort and confuse. Govern shows that law and guidance are moving but uneven. Safeguard turns the argument into design choices. The strongest path forward is not a ban on every memory tool, it is to preserve memory with consent, truth, limits, and a clear exit. Thanks for watching. Bye.